So now looking again at that last test render we did, it's obvious that we're missing some details that would really help make this feel a little bit more realistic. Um, I'm referring to all the dents and scratches and dings that would be taken out of the corners of these buildings just from natural wear and tear. Now we've already done the UVs and we've gotten a pretty good jump on the texture here. So what do we do? There's actually a method that you can use that will not destroy the UVs, and it's actually a method I prefer using as opposed to modeling in all the detail before you texture. The reason is, um, if you use the unfold technique, sometimes it will get messed up and it doesn't really know what to do if you've got a lot of like crazy geometry on the corners and stuff. It just makes unwrapping a lot harder than it needs to be. So what I usually do is exactly like I showed, is I keep the geometry very simple when we do the UV mapping, and then afterwards I'll use this method of modeling on top of what we have and taking out the chunks and putting little dings in the corners, and it won't destroy the UV mapping. So after we do that, we can then export out again a guide for Photoshop, and it'll drop right in on top of the one we already have, and we can just address all those little corners and they'll show up perfectly unwrapped because we're not actually going to add any new faces, we're just going to adjust what we already have. And by doing that, we won't lose any of the UV information that we have already. So let me show you how to do that. So to do that, what I've done now is I've isolated the building that we're going to start beating up, and we'll start on this corner. And the first thing I want to do is give it a little bit of a radius on this edge. So I'm going to do is I'm going to use the extrude edge tool, and you'll notice when I use this I can change this extrusion base width and it's not affecting the mapping. So already we're off to a good start here. So we'll pick something that looks like a decent radius. Let's try something like that. And now what we'll do is we'll take all of these faces on the front and on the side, and we'll give them their own smoothing. And let's find a good spot to do it on. Actually, you know what? I think this is maybe a little bit too much. Let's try it again. Let's select that loop, and we're just gonna make sure we use the same number, just like that. Now we're gonna take out this one right here. So I'm just gonna remove that edge, and now with the cut tool again, I'm just gonna cut all the way across here. Just like, and we'll give them a different smoothing group. Let's try 26. Doesn't really matter. So I'm going to select all of these, and the next thing I'm going to do is come down, where is it, to our paint deformations, And let's use just 1/8 of an inch, and we'll adjust the brush size, something like that. And now what we can do is kind of dent these vertices in a little bit and make it look like a little bit more natural. Actually, let's try a little bit more. Here we go. We're just going to beat up this edge. And that looks pretty good. And what we'll do is we'll just continue doing this all the way down this edge of the wall, just random sizes, random locations. It would probably be wiser to add a little bit more destruction down along the bottom here where people are more likely to bump into the edge than up here. But this is the technique that I would use, and just keep going up and down, cutting in these edges. Over to the side like this, it's going to be a little bit lopsided when you look at it again later. So always rotate it, your view, as you do this so that you're looking kind of straight on. So we'll put another one just right here. This one will be a little bit smaller. And again, we're going to take this edge, remove So we'll select all of these, take the smoothing off, and then give it 26. And we'll just keep doing this up and down here. So here's the result after using that technique and cutting up the rest of this edge. And what we get when we render is here's the before and here's the after. So you can see that that edge is now a lot more beat up and it looks a little bit more natural now. So let's go ahead and let's move on to this archway here. So we'll move over here, and what we'll do is get rid of some of these lines that we had in here that they're not really doing anything. So let's get rid of them. They were only there when we were modeling just to help as a guide. And you notice when I removed that last vertice, the face got screwed up here. That's a very simple fix. We're just going to come into edges, go to turn, and we're going to select these invisible edges and just turn them, just like that. So what we need to do first is get sort of that rounded edge on here. And unfortunately, there's no really great way to do this without screwing up the mapping other than using the cut tool again. So what we'll do is we'll come in to right here, and we're just going to trace around this edge. And now we're going to do the same thing on the other side of the door. just like this, and then all the way down. Okay, so we've got the inner part of this, or I'm sorry, the outer part. Then the inner part of the doorway, what we'll do is we'll cut a loop through here, and then we can actually turn on preserve UVs, constrain to edges, and then this one we can actually slide without a problem. You can see the mapping's just fine. So it looks like we've got a few edges that need to get fixed. That one. And now we can just go and connect these vertices. We'll just do this all the way around. Okay, and it actually looks like this needs to slide over a little bit more. Something like that. Okay, so now we can take all of these faces and we're going to make sure that they're all using 25. And that should give us our rounded edge now, or at least it will appear rounded when we render. And now, using the same technique that we used on this corner over here, we can start cutting up this edge. So let me go ahead and I'll do that. And so here I've finished adding all of these little dents and chips and stuff using that same technique. And here is the before and after. We will probably never notice the radius, so we can leave that rounded edge off and just kind of do the same thing where we cut on either side of the line, remove the inner one, and then connect the vertices. You can do that to the background ones. So for instance, here's one of those buildings that's a little bit further away, and what I would do to create the dents and stuff for this is, instead of making those extra edges here to help it look rounded, all I would do is the same technique, just come in like this, cutting the same number on either sides again, and then we would just remove this and connect all of these. And that's how I would do all the chips and stuff on the background buildings.